What do you think about Ukraine's call, the legitimacy of that call to be made a NATO member? And if so, when? They want it now. Can you understand the other countries or the objections which says, no, not at the moment?
Yeah, I can. So the first thing to say is that Article 10 of the founding agreement in NATO says that there's an open door policy, and that door is still open for Ukraine. But we were never going to go to war for Ukraine in 2014 when Russia annexed Crimea, and we're not going to go to war on behalf of Ukraine in 2023, the year after the invasion. So it is quite right that there's a conditions-based element to this, that Ukraine should join NATO, not a time-based element, because the time-based element would lead to that absurdity that you would incur Article 5, an attack on one is an attack on all, if Ukraine were to come into the NATO alliance prematurely. But they have said that the military action plan, which is the normal way of going into NATO, will be circumvented when the conditions are correct. That is actually ongoing at the moment, for example, for Bosnia and Herzegovina, which will become the 33rd member of NATO, because one of the outputs really of the Vilnius conference is that Sweden look like they're going to now join, and that will be a vote in the Turkish parliament, which was the last sort of can't join refusenik.
And I suppose watching all of this with interest, of course, will be Moscow. And, you know, they'll be pleased probably, won't they, to see that Zelenskyy was angry yesterday and to see that slight awkwardness between President Biden and President Zelenskyy when they meet today.
I don't think they will, because one of the key things in the communique were paragraphs 7 and 8. And what that said, and this is from all the 31 nations, is that the NATO countries will never sign up to the illegal annexation of Crimea or any of the parts that Russia has done, and that Russia should leave Ukraine with all its troops. Now, if you take that from a Moscow perspective, the notion that either land for peace or a frozen peace will mean that NATO countries will concede to any demands of that just isn't in the ballpark. So from that perspective, those aspects of the communique are a very strong message to Russia. So I don't think we should take that as a sort of schism between any of the NATO nations. For me, it was a very, very strong message indeed.
What about Prime Minister Rishi Sunak avoiding a row over the use of cluster bombs? Do you think that was clever politics, or do you think that was showing weakness?
Well, I think he had to do it for the simple reason that the UK is a signatory to the 2008 Cluster Munitions Convention. And if you're a signatory to that, you cannot either give them, we don't have them, nor should you give succour to those who have them and give them. So in terms of the international law, he had to do that. Now, that doesn't mean that probably tacitly he wouldn't support it, because the reason in military terms that they were given the cluster munitions is that they need more artillery, and there are more cluster munitions in the inventories of the US than there are non-cluster munitions. So it's a pragmatic military decision. It might be morally distasteful, but it is not illegal from either an American perspective or the perspective of sustaining Ukraine in the fight.
OK. Major General Chip Chapman, thank you. We'll leave it there. Chip is the former head of counter-terrorism at the Ministry of Defence.